medical debt is trapping families in poverty, and big banks, they're cashing in on it. How many big bank stories do we have to do to where somebody says, Jesus, we need to really rethink of how we're treating Wall Street? You know, when I got to tell you, in the maybe 60s or the 70s, banks weren't, you know, it wasn't that, was Gecko, what was the movie that was made, Greed is Good, you know.
Wall Street.
Wall Street, okay. Before Wall Street, you had mom and pop banks, okay? And then just like everything else, you had predators come in and buy all the mom and pop banks and come up with organizations like Wells Fargo and you name it, Chase Manhattan. And so now we're at a point to where I don't think there's a way to turn around here, man. This is an ugly story. Why don't you give us a story?
Yeah, excuse me. Basically, what's happening here is obviously medical debt is a massive problem here in the United States. Skyrocketing healthcare costs, skyrocketing prescription drugs, surgery costs, whatever it is, and people can't pay it. So the big banks thought, wait a minute, here's people in debt. How do we capitalize on this? Well, we partner with the hospitals. Mm-hmm. So when you're recovering from your surgery, the hospital comes up to you with a document and says, hey, this is going to set you back about $80,000, but don't worry. Sign this little piece of paper right here. We're partnered with this Allied Bank over here, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You sign this, they're going to give you the loan and pay it off, and you don't have to worry. I know you just got a new heart a few hours ago, and we want to make it as hassle-free for you as possible. So they take out these massive loans that do, for the most part, at first, have a lower interest rate than a credit card.
And then every year it turns
just balloons and balloons and balloons, and they're screwing these patients over.
Who are the people behind this? Is it coming directly? Is it a new Wall Street grab, or is it just kind of just here and there?
It's both Wall Street, because you got a lot of hedge funds in it, and just the simple greed of the hospital industry.
Yeah.
And I think people overlook the hospital industry.
Yeah.
We don't have, you've talked about,
Mom
we
and
don't
pop.
have mom and pop banks.
No.
We don't have mom and pop medical centers anymore.
Doctor-owned hospitals are a thing of the past.
Yeah.
They came in and consolidated all that. This is how it lands right here.
Yep, and it's all about the money. It's not about the care.
Yeah.
And the banks said, there's a lot of money in this. Let's go get our cut.
Okay. Julian Assange is still facing extradition and charges of violating the Espionage Act for exposing the U.S. military's war crimes. This story has always bothered me so badly because, the people love to, he's a criminal, he did these terrible things, he raped a girl, which proved to be completely nonsense.
Yeah.
That was years ago, and they said, no, he didn't. As a matter of fact, that was created by the spook industry. The spook industry created that story to discredit him. Pick this up and how dangerous the Espionage Act is, and how if they use it against him, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, we are. Listen, people love him or hate him. It doesn't matter your personal feelings about him at all. What we're talking about here is journalism itself at risk. And Julian Assange is currently facing extradition to the United States. They want to charge him under the Espionage Act, which could put him in prison forever until he dies. And the Espionage Act is not supposed to be for whistleblowers exposing problems with our own U.S. military.
But that's 100% of what they're doing.
Yes, it is. And that's what we're hearing from past whistleblowers. Daniel Ellsberg has now had to come out. Noam Chomsky is coming out, and they are sounding the alarm bells about what could happen should Assange come over here and be convicted, because that is going to be the death blow for what's left of journalism in this country.
Howard Zinn was talking about this his entire career. He said this is getting ready to happen. He even described what the legislation would look like. It looked like the Espionage Act. Now let's talk about these horrible things he did. First, he disclosed that the feds were spying on U.S. citizens. That's one of the bad things he did. The other thing he did is he was the first to disclose that dozens of purely dirty tricks by the U.S. were being pulled off all around the globe, and he pointed them out. He said, this is what happened in this country, this is what happened in this country. Here are the people that were responsible. That's another terrible thing he did. The other thing he did is he was the first to disclose the remarkable impact that the feds were having on controlling the media. So the media attacked him. They didn't like that. That's terrible. How dare you do that? He was first to disclose the indiscriminate use of drone bombs that were killing civilians. Yeah. God, what a criminal he is, Let's put him in prison. He was the first to disclose the details about George Bush and Dick Cheney and how they lied and hustled us into the Iraq War. Sounds like a criminal to me, doesn't he? I can't even get my arms around it. And Biden comes out and says, one of the first things Biden's big thing, this is a quote from him: "Our freedom is dependent on free, unregulated information flowing through the press." Right?
And they will not drop the charges. They want him to come and stand trial. And the charges were actually brought by the Trump administration, the Trump DOJ, after Trump had kind of made it seem like he wasn't going to do anything. We were going to forgive him or whatever. And then, nope, they move forward full steam ahead. Biden has not reversed that course at all. And again, we're not talking about this man releasing, here's all these secrets the United States has.
These are the things I'm talking about. This is what he released.
He's talking about, here are some war crimes that we've committed.
Yeah.
Here are some other atrocities that our government is committing by manipulating the media.
Yeah.
These are things the public needs to know about. 40 years ago, he'd have been a hero, much like Daniel Ellsberg, but now public enemy number one for both the right and the left, depending on where you are that day. But this is an attack on journalism itself.
It is. And the problem, Farron, you and I talk about this all the time. If investigative journalism is dead, which it is, tell me the last time you saw a CNN investigative report that meant anything, that wasn't driven by corporate. It's dead. I mean, you can't find investigative journalism unless you look at independent media like the sources that we rely on. So it's dead. The Espionage Act would have had Daniel Ellsberg in prison to this day. He'd still be in prison. We would never know that Richard Nixon was bombing Cambodia, completely contrary to what he should have been doing. We would have never known the truth about what was happening in Vietnam. We would have never known that whole thing was based on absolute lies. Daniel Ellsberg is the person that put that out there. Under this act, he would be in prison right now to this day.
Exactly, and that's what we have to be concerned about. I mean, hell, even Bernstein and Woodward, maybe they would have been in prison too for exposing Watergate at this point.
Think about it.
Because it's not just that journalism is dead, it's that the feds are trying to make it criminal. That's what it is.
But why isn't the New York Times, why aren't they locking up the New York Times and the Washington Post? They're disclosing this information. They're saying, we're going to publish this. Yeah. Why aren't they part of the problem, you see? But it's easier to go after this guy and, make these stories about what a terror. The movie they made about it was atrocious. And then you find out, who funded the movie? Well, go follow that story. We want to do a story on that, tell the whole story about Ellsberg. But, the point is, it's Kafka. Franz Kafka had it right he wrote a great book called The Trial. Everybody should read it. I know you've read it. You're probably one of the most read political commentators I know. But everybody needs to understand that's what's happening here. It's Kafkian as we're watching this unfold, and nobody seems to give a damn.